My name is Edouard Parinet. I'm the owner with my father here in Château du Moulin-à-Vent, and also we have another estate in Pouilly-Fuissé, domaine du Roc des Boutières. I would say we try to express the quality of the terroir here in Moulin-à-Vent, which is obviously a terroir of volcanic origin, a terroir of granite, a terroir of sand, and this is mostly our objective to show that. We are very lucky to have a very nice interpreter, chef d'orchestre for this terroir, which is the Gamay, which is planted 100% in Château du Moulin-à-Vent, just like in Beaujolais. I think what we, through our winemaking technique, what we try to do is actually to produce wine that are good at any stage of their life. So that's the objective. It's pretty hard to realize, but I would think that the Gamay is naturally a variety that gives a lot of pleasure when they are young, and fortunately in Moulin-à-Vent, because of this very atypical environment, because of the winds, because of the granite, because of the oxides, the silica, the Gamay, the old vines of Gamay do not produce a lot, and so make a wine, I would say almost whatever the technique of winemaking, grapes and wine that will have more density, will have more texture, and will be able to last longer. Our winemaking technique is the result of 15 years of observation, 16 years of observation now. So every year we try to make it better and better, even if it's always very small changes. But at the moment, we believe that soft winemaking, natural winemaking, cool also winemaking, I'm talking about temperature, is better at revealing the different style of terroir between Chantecourt, Rochelle, Verillas, Ocave, etc., etc. So that's how we do it. With some whole bunch, it can very much vary from one vintage to another, but always with indigenous yeast, with pumping over, no pigeage, so pretty soft winemaking, and for a pretty long period, I would say for Beaujolais, 15 to 18 days. We still are inheritors of the tradition, because the Gamay here is planted in very high density, is planted in gobelet, pruned in gobelet. So that's part of the tradition, and nowadays we believe this is the best way to grow our Gamay here in Moulin-à-Vent. So that's definitely part of the tradition and the history of Moulin-à-Vent. Just like the Gamay is also the history of Moulin-à-Vent, since it's been planted here for decades or maybe centuries, I would say. When it comes to new energy or new dynamic, of course we are very much paying attention to the sustainability of our ecosystem, so of our vines, of our soils, of the combination of the two. So I think, observation is maybe to me the best quality that winemakers and vintners may have. So we really are paying attention to the development of our vines and trying to adapt that year after year. So globally speaking, the organic viticulture has been here for a long time. We are certified organic now and 100% proprietor. So there is not one single drop of négoce wines in our wines. And I think that while observing all the time, we have managed to be more precise in the vines, and also to have a more sustainable vineyard, but also a vineyard that gives us result. I find it always very sad to see organic or biodynamic vineyards, but giving too little result, because to me a healthy nature is a nature that gives. So we pay attention to that, and also climate change for us is a big issue when it comes to harvest date. So we are also paying a lot of attention in the vineyard to the harvest. Sometimes starting the harvest very early, but at least having the right maturity, and also using pretty big teams of harvesters, so we can focus on a very short period of time, because we are only in Moulin-à-Vent, so it's important for us to focus on the right time. I'm very curious about the history of vineyards, more globally, of course, especially about Moulin-à-Vent, but more globally. But I think that here, when we make the wines, we don't have a winemaking technique, an aging technique, or a viticulture specialized for an ancient AOC or very famous AOC. The fruit we have is the natural fruit that this variety and these soils are giving us. So that's as simple as that. Moulin-à-Vent is one of the very first AOC in the world. Actually, I think the oldest AOC in the world after Châteauneuf-du-Pape, since Moulin-à-Vent was founded in 1924, because at this time there were some fraudulent merchants using the name Moulin-à-Vent, while the wines were not coming from here. So that's why at this time the administration decided to delimitate Moulin-à-Vent AO, appellation d'origine. But yes, once more, I think what inspires me when making the wine is that when you taste old bottles of Château du Moulin-à-Vent, you really feel and taste the beauty of an old wines made of Gamay on these soils. And so for me, it's a real motivation to produce fine wines that can age. But I can't say that there is an impact on our way to age or to vinify to make the wine. It's just we vinify and age the wine just the way to make the best wine possible, I would say. Moulin-à-Vent has a particular role because historically it has always been seen as the Grand Cru or the Lord of the Cru or whatever. In any case, one of the most notorious and elegant cru of Beaujolais. We were briefly talking about the history, but yeah, Moulin-à-Vent was recognized by Mr. Boutker in 1874 as the place in Beaujolais where you had the biggest concentration of first-class lieux-dits. It was the first AO to be created in Beaujolais and almost in the world, as I was saying. For many years, the label of Château du Moulin-à-Vent were mentioning this Grand Cru classé mention. So Moulin-à-Vent has this role to play into Beaujolais because it has a very strong personality. The soil, the very atypical soil, make a very atypical fruit, a very atypical wine. And so we have this role, I think, to play us, vintners of Moulin-à-Vent, to produce wine that can age, that can be fine in the time, and also that represent this very specific terroir of Moulin-à-Vent, which are this combination of granite full of iron oxide and silica, which makes this very, once more, very elegant wines, fresh, with most of the time a very salivating texture. And I guess this kind of feeling, together with aromas of violets, flowers, and spices, graphite, they are very atypical of Moulin-à-Vent. So that's what we have to show in the future, I think. It's very funny to actually observe this vineyard developing year after year. also for the last 16 years being organic. You know, the organic viticulture is giving better and better result year after year, so that's also interesting. I think the experience that I think is the most valuable for us with Brice is that it's probably for two cuvées of us, which are not actually the Champ de Cour and La Rochelle, but two others which are called Claude Londres and Grand Savarin. These are actually only two vineyards. So you know, Champ de Cour and Rochelle are lieu-dits, like of the equivalent of 10 hectares big, and we have 4 vineyards on it, so 3 hectares or something like this. But in 2009 and 2014, we decided with Brice to isolate the vineyard of Claude Londres, the vineyard which is just in front of the chateau, and the vineyard of Grand Savarin, which is on the lieu-dit aux Caves. Why? Because we observed, really, once more, the observation I think is the key of everything. We observed a particular growing of the vine, a particular maturity of the berry, and all of that seems pretty special to us. So we decided to isolate these two vineyards. We make the wine, we tasted it. Most of the time, for these two cuvées, we had a pretty longer aging because the wines were a little bit tight in the beginning. And what is very interesting is that we started to sell these wines, etc., etc. And after time, we discovered that these two specific vineyards, we are talking about vineyards which are 0.56 hectares for the Claude Londres and 0.72 hectares in Grand Savarin. We discovered that the former family before us in Château du Moulin-à-Vent, so the family Damois in the 20th century, in the 1970s more specifically, and the family Pommier in 1860s, they already decided to isolate this specific vineyard at the time. So this is very interesting because, once more, observing is the key to understanding, I think, in viticulture. And the reality is that these two soils are very atypical, and for 150 years, they have kept this originality. And thanks to this originality, we have been able to see it and show it through our bottles. So, yeah, that was a very, very nice experience for Brice and I. What I can say is that the material that were used in the 60s, 70s, 80s were similar to what we are using today. Not because we kept them, we did some attempts of concrete tanks, of foudre those last years, but these attempts have never been successful to us. So nowadays in the chateau, we have a part of stainless steel tanks, which were already settled in the Château du Moulin-à-Vent from the early 70s, one of the very first stainless steel tanks to have been produced here in France, and oak barrel. So I think that oak barrel in Moulin-à-Vent it's important because noticeably when you go a little bit high in the appellation, where the soils are very sandy and where the depth of the soil can be pretty low, I'm talking about 60 to 100 centimeters, the berries that we are producing here is naturally very small berries with a lot of concentration. And the oak barrel, our oak barrels are approximately 6 years old, so from 0 to 12 years. The oak barrel really helped the wines to get to be more supple, to be a little bit more light, I would say, or more open also. And that's important because these juices, if we were aging them in stainless steel tank, they would probably be a little bit too hard and lacking of harmony. So I think a small proportion of barrel for this very specific terroir of Moulin-à-Vent, once more, rather in the ace of Moulin-à-Vent, where you have this very granitic and sandy terroir, is important to smooth and give them, I don't know, give them more elegance, more openness. No, I think the old vines, they are, first of all, they are very important in Beaujolais because they participate in the global balance of our wines, I think. And the chance that we have is that for 30 years, Beaujolais has been a region much more famous for its light and November-y kind of wine. And due to this period where there was no time for observation, for viticulture, saying that pretty simply, the vines have not been changed. And so 80s, 90s, 2000, almost no vines were changed. And that's why nowadays we have many vines from the 70s, 60s and before. Old vines, they are so a chance for Beaujolais, but they need a very particular care because they are, just like the humans, much more fragile than the younger ones. So I would say very simply, one of the best things that we do for the old vines is to work the soil in a much more careful way. Rather than using the enjambeur, we use horses, because the horses, we can really adapt the speed of a horse work at 2-3 kilometers per hour, while the enjambeur, it goes at least 5 or 6 kilometers per hour, and that's too fast for the old vines. So that's something which I think is very important. And after, when it comes to climate change, but just like I was briefly saying before, the earliest and more mature vintage that we have got in Moulin-à-Vent recently, I'm talking about 22 noticeably, 2020 also. First of all, we have been harvesting very early for these two vintage. 22, we started 18th of August, and we were very much in advance in comparison to our neighbors in Moulin-à-Vent. So we are taking some bets on harvest dates. I think in 22 that was a good one. And after, just like I was also briefly saying, as we are only focusing on Moulin-à-Vent, that's our chance. We recruit a big team of harvesters. I'm talking about 80 to 100 people divided into two teams. So we can really much focus on the right bracket of time to harvest our Gamays. And this is a lot of work, a lot of HR also to recruit all these people coming from France, but also from Italy, from Poland, sometimes Eastern Europe. But in the end, that makes a real difference to have the Gamay coming into the cuvage at the right time and not 2 days too early or 2 days too late. I think there are two main changes regarding climate change. First of all, very super early harvest dates, just like I was mentioning before. 15, 18, 20, 22. That's 4 vintage within 10 years, so that's 40% of the time, which is clearly not so little. And after, one of the big change also regarding climate change is the impact of the frost, meaning that the very first days of May, they always have been in France risky in regards to negative temperature in the morning. So it's not new. What is new is that before 70s, 80s, 90s, never you would have a month of February or March which would be hot and where the vine will start to grow. While now we may have a month of February, March where average temperature can be like 15, 16, 18 degrees Celsius, and then the vines, she understands it's the beginning of the thing, and so she's going out. And once the frost episode comes in May and that the vines already got out, it kills a lot of its energy. So that's something that happens now because of climate change and that were not happening before. We don't have a lot of solutions against this, except pruning the latest possible. But yeah, otherwise we are pretty much depending on these climatic changes. But no, I think if Moulin-à-Vent plays its role into Beaujolais, if Beaujolais itself grows in the right direction of better valorizing its different crus, inside the crus valorizing its lieux-dits, and that globally the region is able to make the nicest viticulture possible. That would be my wish for Beaujolais and Moulin-à-Vent. And for us, I think my wish would actually be to store even more, back vintage, and to be able to sell them, to release them on the market even more than what I do. Nowadays we are releasing the 23, and I have a little 2015, 2014, which we have kept for all this time. But I would love to be able, with the team and the chateau, to release even more of these back vintage wine, because it's really magic when you taste a wine of Moulin-à-Vent, of Château du Moulin-à-Vent, which is mature. So that's an experience that I would like my client and any wine lovers to experience soon.